Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with metaltrenches.com, and today we're talking about Foo Fighters and their new album Medicine at Midnight via RCA. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, flannel time! Medicine at Midnight is the 10th studio album from this legendary rock band, following up 2017's Concrete and Gold. Now, I may be a metalhead first and foremost these days, but like many who went through a good portion of their development in the 90s, I still have a soft spot for the grunge and alternative groups that were very much my initial gateway into heavier music. I of course spent a lot of time in particular with 1997's The Color and the Shape and 1999's Nothing Left to Lose, both dropping some of the biggest singles in their respective years. And even when I wasn't fanboying a particular album, there was no avoiding the nonstop airplay of other incredible tracks like One by One, Best of You, and The Pretender. That seems pretty much par for the course for most people, I think, but one probably unique, potentially unpopular opinion I have is that it wasn't until 2011's Wasting Light that Foo Fighters dropped their true magnum opus, it being, in my account, their most focused and consistent album of all time, aside from also sporting the usual quality singles. All of that to say, I'm not just a fan of classic-era Foo Fighters, but their newer stuff as well, despite being pretty underwhelmed with both Sonic Highways and Concrete and Gold. In particular, the former's documentary series was easily more interesting than anything that the music had to offer. So now we have Medicine at Midnight, and going in at this point, it felt like a toss-up to me. It could be the best rock record I've heard in years, or another completely forgettable retread of old ideas. I think the first thing that stood out to me about this album before even pressing play was the runtime. 9 tracks, 37 minutes. Big thumbs up for that. This band has always been one that, even in their heyday, I considered to be overly ambitious in their track listings, leading to bloated experiences just as ripe with filler as real gems. With that in mind, I was definitely more hopeful going in at the prospect of a sub 40-minute record with hopefully a bit more brevity this time. Starting with my favorite track, I think Waiting on a War is an easy standout and obvious choice for a single, with its slow build from softer acoustic tones to the final triumphant sing-along worthy conclusion, calling back to some of Foo Fighters' best material. It's also arguably the most traditional and recognizable within the band's discography, with Love Dies Young being a close second. The rest of the tracks definitely have a different kind of flavor this time around, though. The title track always being at the forefront of my mind as an example. This one is a funky crooner that had me reflecting on David Bowie's more dance music-oriented days, which actually made even more sense upon discovering that Bowie's 1983 album Just Dance was a major influence on Medicine at Midnight. God, it just feels good to be right. It's an interesting song that certainly has its merits in terms of innovation and unique direction, from the rhythms and approach to the guitars to the incorporation of female backup vocals, the latter of which is a trend on a number of these songs. Even right from the top with the opening na-na-nas of the bouncy Making a Fire. Not even No Son of Mine, for all of its rock and roll glory, is free from these additional touches. No son of mine! Holding Poison has some similar vibes while also incorporating elements of everything from Queens of the Stone Age to Pink Floyd. The big triumphant layering of the backup vocals on this one alongside the raging classic rock guitar solo around the 3-minute mark quite honestly sounds like something straight off of Dark Side of the Moon. This track and a few others over the runtime sport some interesting use of percussion as well. Here it's some simple but effective and memorable use of woodblock, but Shame Shame also has a very earworm drum loop alongside plucked violin strings and minimalist acoustic guitar that makes for an interesting work of sonic texturing before moving into the soothing cello of the chorus. Speaking of which, as usual, we of course get a more down track in the kind of Walking After You meets the Beatles Chasing Birds. A lovely track for sure, albeit not one that I would choose for a playlist in the long run. So returning to my initial question, is Medicine at Midnight an instant classic or forgettable retread of old ideas? Well, time will tell, but my answer for you right now is neither. It's certainly not the latter with all of the aforementioned Bowieisms and classic rock influences seeping in, but I'm also not feeling like the end result makes for an album I plan on listening to over and over again either, like Wasting Light. I will go on record and call this Foo Fighters' most ambitious album to date, if nothing else. I give it an 8 for enjoyability. There's no real duds on the album, and the energy is high, which comes through a lot more here than on the last two albums, if you ask me. I think that the consistency pulls it up above an average score, even if I don't see myself spending a lot of extended time with it from here. I give it an 8 for musicianship. There are some really solid performances to be found from all band members on this one, but still that magical instant classic formula that solidified this band in the zeitgeist from their early albums rarely rears its head. And I give it a 9 for innovation. There should be no surprise with this being the highest score given everything that I've said so far. Even if you outright don't enjoy the album at all, I feel there is no objectively denying its uniqueness both for the time and with the band's own discography. It's moments like these that exemplify why I have this scale to begin with, as I will always applaud a band for trying new things, whether they end up working out or not. So an 8.3 overall and a B for Medicine at Midnight. It's not the set of alternative rock anthems I was so desperately hoping for in an age where the genre is, let's face it, in a severe drought. But what I got instead made for an interesting and intellectually intriguing surprise nonetheless. Get it once more via RCA. Y'all, thanks as always for watching, and sorry for the fewer clips this time, but this is the type of album that is ripe for getting your video claimed. But let me know down in the comments, what did you think of this album? What did you think of my review of it? And what's your favorite Foo Fighters album and song? And hey, stick around because I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. Full album reviews, tier lists, interviews with bands on the podcast. Obviously, generally more metal focused than this particular album, but we welcome you with open arms and hope you'll try something new. Also chat with us on Discord and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I'll see you in the trenches.